This presentation will focus on mobility equipment that is used by Colbert members in an apartment and in the community. My name is Lori. I'm a physical therapist with the Assistive Technology unit at the University of Illinois at Chicago.
And I'm Brenda Sposato. I'm a rehab engineer that works at the Assistive Technology unit along with Lori.
We begin the assessment for mobility equipment when we first see the individual in the nursing home. And these are the goals that we're going to talk about today in this webinar. And during the phase one, when we meet the individual in the nursing home, we assess what mobility devices they're currently using for mobility within the nursing home. And some of the clients that we see are going out into the community, so then we can hear from them how things are working and what they have trouble with and other information that will lead us to predict what type of devices will be needed in the apartment and particularly in the community once they move. We plan at this point, not knowing for sure exactly when they're moving, if their medical status will change, but we try to predict as well as we can what they'll be needing. And the primary purpose of collecting this information early is because sometimes the mobility device that they use will have a big impact on the apartment selection. So we try to communicate to the other community agencies what the individual's mobility and equipment they use, how that will impact the type of apartment they're going to be safe living in. Some of the important considerations you see on the slides here, it's very individual, of course, to each person, but some things to think about that we have learned is a single step or just a threshold at the entry. And the first picture on the left, you see just one step up seems like a simple thing to accomplish. And an individual who walks, maybe they use a cane or they have a walker, that might not be a problem. With the cane, usually they can hold the door frame and step up without any trouble. But with the walker, you do have to have enough balance to stand, lift the walker, put it inside, step up and walk in or coming out in reverse. So it's something to think about, particularly anyone using a wheelchair. If somebody's in a manual wheelchair, it would be very difficult to get themselves up and down it. We've seen a few individuals who use the wheelchair more for endurance, so they could get out of the chair, pop up the front wheels and push it into the apartment. Or if somebody's going to be with a caregiver full time whenever going out, that might work for them. But it's something that needs to be carefully considered for safety. As far as a set of stairs, indoors, outdoors, if it's an outdoor set of stairs, like you see in the third picture here, you can see how steep those are. There's no railings. It's somewhat covered, where some stairs you have to worry about ice and snow, clearing the stairs for safety. An indoor set of stairs, there wouldn't be any concern for ice on them. Some individuals do fine with one railing. Maybe they use a cane, or if they are used to using two railings, a wide set of stairs like you see in the second picture, that could be a problem because they are only going to have one hand on the sturdy railing. And the other thing with stairs that we think about is if somebody's using a walker or a rollator, they need to be able to get it up and down those stairs. Or even groceries, laundry, if they need both hands to support themselves, they wouldn't be able to carry anything up and down. So it doesn't always say they can't have stairs, but it has to be carefully considered for safety and, if they need to evacuate the building or how much caregiver support time they have, that somebody will be there to help them with the stairs. Now, with the manual wheelchair, some people seem to think, I'll make it work. If they really like the apartment, they want to move in there, they'll either pull the chair themselves up and down or have somebody help them with it, but that's not necessarily safe. It's something to really think carefully about. With a power wheelchair, there's no way you can have a threshold or any stairs. Some individuals seem to think storage, like they maybe can store the wheelchair in an area where it's safe and it's protected. But with the power wheelchair, you need to be charging it at night. It needs to be safe, that it can't be stolen. It can't be exposed to the elements in any way. So it is the major factor we consider when making recommendations for apartments. In this fourth picture over here, again, is the door width. With the front door, if an individual is using a wheelchair, the width is very important, getting the chair in and out. And some of the individuals we have worked with, they need to use the wheelchair within the apartment. So every door in the apartment has to be wide enough for that chair to get through. You can see for this gentleman, it's a tight fit trying to get into the bathroom there. And the ATU in phase 2 of our services, will learn, or you've already heard about things that can be done to help with that indoor mobility. But it's important to know if the individual needs the wheelchair in the community only, and just the front door needs to be accessible, that the wheelchair can get through it, or if they'll have to use that wheelchair at all times in the apartment, and then every door width needs to be assessed. Another thing to think about is the flooring. We worked with one woman who was fine pushing herself throughout the nursing home. She got around all day in her wheelchair without trouble, but with just a thin carpeting in the apartment she moved to, she had a lot of trouble, and she was too tired, and by the end of the day, her shoulders hurt from trying to push the chair on carpeting. Also, you'll see a threshold here. Just a small wooden threshold, 1/4 inch, can be enough that somebody's not able to get their wheelchair over that threshold through the doorway. There are, of course, things, if the landlord is open to it, we can make changes and maybe remove the threshold and make it a flatter transition there. The other thing is with walking. Sometimes walking on a tile floor is much easier than with even a thin carpeting. It can cause tripping and other problems. In the device storage we talked about, it can be a big issue for somebody with stairs to be able to safely store a wheelchair. So in the phase 1, we also start to plan for the procurement of the mobility equipment the individual will be using. In the nursing home, if the individual is using a wheelchair or walker, first determining who owns that mobility device. A lot of the members we talk to say, is this your chair? Is it belong to the nursing home? And they're really not sure. And they'll say, I don't know, somebody gave it to me. So helping them figure out, is that their chair that they own, or is it being loaned to them, is step 1 of the process. Often they're using equipment that is owned by the nursing home. So knowing that new equipment will be needed when it's time for them to move, we can do a little bit of work ahead of time, confirming what the history is with their insurance. Have they ever had a device purchased for them? How long ago was it? What has insurance funds been used for? And that helps determine if the member will qualify for a new device when it's time for them to leave the nursing home. Sometimes, often, more than one device is needed for an individual. They maybe are able to walk within an apartment. They do pretty well getting around, but more than half a block, in the community, and they're too tired to go further. Their balance isn't good. So sometimes they would want maybe a walker in the apartment, but then for the community, they might need a manual wheelchair, or maybe where they move to, stores are close enough. If they could get 4 blocks away, they can get to the grocery store by themselves. So it becomes an issue when you have 2 devices that are needed, typically like a walker and then a power wheelchair, or a cane and a rollator walker for the community. So we'll talk more about that and funding. In our little chart here, there's so many factors that come into play, and we've seen a lot of scenarios. But if you think of the device that an individual would need, if somebody's walking by themselves, but they need an assistive device, it might be a cane, a walker, a rollator walker, and those types of devices are pretty basic. Usually ordering that for the individual before they leave the nursing home and move into their apartment, that can be done by their case manager. The nursing home may have therapists that can help with that, and insurance will usually fund the cane or walker for sure. Sometimes the rollator is a little more complicated, but a basic type of equipment, a basic manual wheelchair, that can usually be coordinated by the case manager, or if there's, again, a nursing home therapist that knows them or has worked with them, that can be addressed through insurance. Now, a custom manual wheelchair, we'll talk a little bit about what makes the wheelchairs custom, either manual or power, and those require more involved assessment. You would need a therapist to be involved with that, and we've worked with many individuals who had the evaluation performed by the nursing home therapists. Most nursing homes would have a supplier that they typically work with, and the therapist and supplier would do the evaluation together. That can also apply to a basic power wheelchair, where the nursing home therapist and the supplier will perform the evaluation. In some cases, that just doesn't happen for one reason or another, or it's not for sure what they'll need when they get to the community. There are times when the Assistive Technology unit will be called in, and then we will be able to assist with the evaluation. We have therapists that can help with the evaluation, so we can make specific wheelchair recommendations and seating that will meet that individual's needs when they have more involved circumstances. When multiple devices are needed, like I mentioned before, the primary device or the more expensive device, we definitely want to go through insurance. So if somebody needs a manual wheelchair and a walker, you would want the manual wheelchair to be funded through insurance, and then Colbert funds, maybe through the case manager or sometimes the Assistive Technology unit, we have access to Colbert funds that could fund the less expensive piece of equipment. The wheelchair usually would be the more expensive piece of equipment, and also whatever device insurance funds, they'll do repairs and maintain that device over the years. So once somebody leaves the nursing home, we don't want them to be stuck with a chair that can't be repaired. Over time, they're going to have to take care of this equipment and continue using it probably for a long time. So that is definitely something to think about early in terms of which device would go to insurance for funding, and then which device we would search for other, maybe Colbert funds that could supply that type of assistive technology. So we're talking about all this types of devices that individuals use and will be needed in the community. Let's go through and we'll look at examples of each of these individually, just so we know we're all referring to the same type of equipment when we're reading reports and communicating with each other. For somebody who walks by themselves or sometimes walking with assistance of a caregiver or family member, a cane is typically for balance. You have a straight cane, and then there's also the quad canes. This would be a small base quad cane that has the 4 little legs on it. And sometimes individuals have them of their own that they brought to the nursing home, or if they're being borrowed in the nursing home, we would want to provide them with their own before they leave. The hemi cane in the middle is a wider base of support. Usually somebody who's had a stroke, maybe they only have one hand and foot that are strong and the other hand and foot are weaker. That can be helpful for getting around within an apartment, short distances, and the individual may need somebody there with them when they're using the cane. But if they have a caregiver coming in daily or they have a family member around, then they would be able to get out of their chair and not just be sitting all the time and walk within their apartment. We see some individuals sometimes who use crutches to get around. A walker is one of the more basic items. It's good for balance. Somebody who has some weakness, you can lean on your hands, take some of the weight off your legs. It can be helpful for balance and for weakness. A walker can have 4 rubber caps on the end. You pick it up, move it forward, you take your step into it, pick it up again. We see a lot of individuals who use the rolling walker. So you have wheels on the front, and then the back 2 legs need to be slidey. So individuals in the nursing home often have tennis balls. They slide good on tile floors. They're not so good for the community. And then there's also plastic caps, or these little skis are called, that can be on the back wheels. With the rolling walker, you don't have to balance yourself, pick it up. You just push it forward, take your step, push it forward. So that works really well for a lot of the clients that we see. And the styles are usually pretty basic, but there are bariatric versions. So we do have to be cautious about the individual's weight and make sure we're getting the correct walker that will fit their weight limit. The rollator walker, there's lots of different things people call these. We call it a rollator walker because it fits the bill of a walker. It looks similar, but with the rollator, you have a seat on it so that it's got 4 wheels, front and back. For somebody who's weak, you can't really lean on it and take a lot of weight. It's more for some balance. It has wheel locks. So the really nice thing is you can lock it up so it's not going to slide away and turn around and sit on it. So for an individual who has COPD or maybe some other problems with their endurance, they always have a place to sit and rest when they have their rollator with them. A lot of individuals use it for their laundry, for groceries, for carrying things. Someone who might need to carry a small oxygen tank with them, they could maybe put that in the basket and bring it with them where they go. So rollator walker is less for medical needs, more just for balance and endurance in the community. And then getting into wheelchairs, some individuals use a wheelchair in the nursing home. The nursing home prefers that, maybe for liability reasons or just to make sure the individual is safe. So looking at what type of apartment they'll be in and where their community is, we definitely want to recommend the correct wheelchair. If it's a basic manual wheelchair that they need, it's not any unique features to it, we want to recommend the wheelchair at the right size. That even a basic chair, you have to recommend the correct width and the correct depth of the chair. Sometimes it's important how high the chair is from the floor. You can see this gentleman, he uses both his hands and his foot. So his hands push the chair forward, his leg helps steer. If somebody's had a stroke, they would use their stronger arm and leg to push the chair. So there are at least 3 features that are important to know: the width, the depth and the height of the chair. We always recommend somebody have a cushion on their chair. You could see this is a basic cushion made of foam. It comes with a cover that can be wiped down easily, but just something that will be replaceable and give them some comfort. If somebody's sitting in the chair for a while, it definitely needs a cushion on it to keep them safe and comfortable. Brenda's going to talk a little bit more about the customized wheelchairs.
So as Lori just noted, for many individuals, a standard manual wheelchair might be very appropriate for them. But in cases where a standard manual wheelchair does not meet the individual's needs, both functionally and mobility-wise, we will look at different types of manual wheelchairs. So what you see here on this slide, in the center, you see a manual wheelchair with a tilt and space feature. And so what that allows is alternate positioning throughout the day for a given individual. So it allows an individual's body weight to be exerted on the seat cushion initially. Then by tilting that wheelchair frame back on the frame, you're able to now transfer that weight to other parts of the body to relieve pressure under the buttocks and the thighs. The gentleman on the left is sitting in a very customized, very lightweight manual wheelchair designed for very active individuals, and he was a very active individual. And so it was really important that his needs be matched to the appropriate mobility device. It's really important when we're looking at customized wheelchairs that the individual have the opportunity to be assessed outside of the nursing home in their new living environment, in that new apartment, in that new community setting, so that they have a better understanding of what their mobility needs are. In that new environment, they will likely be traversing longer distances. They will likely be traversing over different terrains, so that we want to make sure that they are safe and they are stable in those mobility devices. On the far right of the slide, you see different types of seat cushions. So many times when we're looking at customized wheelchairs, we're looking at customized seat cushions. And so we're looking at seat cushions that could provide pressure management to prevent pressure sore development or address pressure sore development. What you see on the top is a foam cushion, and what you see below that is an air-filled cushion, both of which have different properties and different abilities to address someone's positioning needs as well as their pressure management needs. When we start to look at powered mobility, it's very important that the individual be assessed outside of the nursing home, primarily because the environment will be very different from the nursing home. And again, we're looking at different types of terrain and different types of surfaces, and we're looking at different distances for the individual to traverse. So it's really important for the individual to get into their apartment, get into that community, and get a decent assessment of what their needs are, how far they're traveling, where they're traveling, and also obviously the space in which they're traveling in their apartment or their apartment building. So what you see on this slide are examples of different styles of mobility devices, from the very basic on the far left, and having those individuals try that basic power wheelchair outdoors in their home in the second photo, and then indoors in their home in that third photo, and in the hallway of the apartment building in the fourth photo, moving left to right, making sure that there's enough maneuverability and negotiation ability with that device. Another type of powered mobility device that an individual could be assessed for is a powered scooter. And powered scooters are available in either three-wheeled or four-wheeled models, and that's what you see over on the right-hand side of the slide. The top photo is a four-wheeled model. Below that is a three-wheeled model, a little bit smaller, a little bit slimmer. And then what you see below that is the option in scooters to disassemble it for transportation. And for some individuals, this is a very critical feature. Maybe they don't have an accessible vehicle for transport. Maybe they are traveling with family members or friends who have a traditional four-door, two-door car, and they need to transport the device in the trunk of that car. So scooters offer that as an option. The pieces and parts are not extremely lightweight though, so we need to keep that into consideration. The other thing we need to consider with scooters is the individual's functional ability to maneuver that scooter. What you'll see among all of the photos on this slide is that they're maneuvered or driven with a tiller style system. And typically you need two hands to be able to do that. There is a way to use one hand to maneuver it, but the individual needs to have really good control to be able to do that. So the things that we consider when we look at scooters are what the individual's functional abilities are, whether they need additional positioning, because that's not usually an option with scooters, and the space in which they have to maneuver those scooters, whether that's indoors, outdoors, and both.
Thank you. This completes our module on Phase 1 Mobility Services for the Colbert client.